Reproductive rights, not for women only. Most of these arguments and observations have been repeated by many since I wrote this, but I think you'll find my comments on the morality of self-sacrifice interesting. Also, in the section on competing rights, I took that from The Ethics of Liberty by Murray Ann Rothbard. But a couple years ago, I heard Judge Andrew Napolitano state the constitutional case against abortion in both religious and secular terms. He was able to do both in less than 1 minute, and I found his argument compelling. Now, 1992, Bellevue, Washington. In cases of unplanned pregnancy, the law favors women. The choice to abort or not is theirs. The fathers have no say. The choice to keep the children or not is usually theirs. The fathers have no say. But if they keep the children one way or another, men are expected to pay. This is one of the realities of sex discrimination against men. Quote, "A woman who finds herself inadvertently pregnant can decide without so much as talking with the man involved to destroy the child, or, again, she can bear the child and make him pay." Close quote. C.H. Friedman, Manhood Redo. Many argue it's the woman's body, and any issues regarding childbearing are her concern, not his. If this is entirely the case, then just as women have a right to choose, so men must have the same right. If men have no choice in the abortion birth decision, then there should be no way in which women can impose the responsibility for child support upon men either directly through payments from the father or indirectly through welfare payments from the government. Financial abortion. The equivalent of women's right to choose to keep or abort a pregnancy is men's right to choose whether to financially support women's choices. This is because the decision whether or not to pay and provide for a child's first 18 years is at least the equivalent of a woman's decision to abort or not. Feminists don't see it that way, of course, and oppose men's right to choose. Ironically, they resort to the same argument pro-life uses to oppose pro-choice. Pro-life says, she made her choice when she chose to have sex. Now she must bear the child. The feminist version goes something like this. He made his choice when he chose to have sex, and now he must pay. The politics of abortion require both sides to try and have it both ways. Aborting a pregnancy for any reason is sad, but there is comedy of a kind in the debates raging over this issue. For while some pro-lifers claim in tones sometimes calm, other times strident, but often self-righteous, that their interest is in protecting the rights of the unborn, they will grant a woman's right to abort a pregnancy if her life is endangered if she carries the fetus to term. Does this indicate they are willing to cede the rights of the possessor of the body, the woman, are superior to those of the occupant, the baby? They say it's murder to abort a pregnancy, but this presumes a right to trespass. More about that below. Further, they assert the pregnant woman made her decision and lost any superseding rights the moment she got pregnant. Still, they compromise their position with their willingness to allow abortions in cases where the woman would otherwise die. So beyond the fact of their bald assertions, they offer no moral basis to justify their agenda unless it's the morality of self-sacrifice. A morality of self-sacrifice is, as Carol Gilligan notes, fundamental to the pro-life stand on abortion. At a time when much of the middle class could be characterized as working poor, the decision to bear a baby imposes many obligations that are difficult to fulfill under the best of circumstances. The dilemma of pro-life is that it presumes to impose these obligations on all women, regardless of their situation. While pro-choice recognizes and avoids this, it has a moral dilemma of its own. Quote, retrieving the judgmental initiative, the woman begins to ask whether it is selfish or responsible, moral or immoral, to include her own needs within the compass of her care and concern, close quote. Carol Gilligan in a different voice. Essentially, the question is, aren't individual rights inherently selfish, and isn't it immoral to be selfish? Taken to the extreme, selfishness can be immoral, and individual rights are, at root, selfish. But any ideology that rejects all selfishness has no basis upon which to prohibit such crimes as rape, theft, or murder. At root, absolute altruism is criminal. Don't believe it? Isn't denying another the use of your body to relieve their sexual desires selfish? Isn't refusing to let others take your possessions to maintain their standard of living selfish? Isn't refusing to let others sacrifice your life to serve their cause selfish? Were we to deny that some degree of selfishness is good, we would be reduced to the creed of the parasite. Thus, what we commonly consider moral requires at least some selfishness, and this renders the selfish nature of individual rights inassailable. Or is that unassailable? I always get confused about that. Competing rights, private property versus trespass. The abortion issue, therefore, is arguable only within the context of competing rights. Remember what I said at the beginning about Judge Napolitano's argument. If you can find that on the web, I strongly encourage you to check it out. It's really compelling. In this context, the issue is not a question of murder or sin, but of the rights of the owner of the host body, the mother, versus the rights of the occupant, the baby. Do women own their own bodies? If pro-life answers no, then they reveal a belief in involuntary servitude or slavery. If, on the other hand, they agree women do own themselves, then the entire debate over the legitimacy of choice becomes a question of property rights, and few have so clearly articulated this as Murray Rothbard. Quote, "Abortion should be looked upon not as murder of a living person, but as the expulsion of an unwanted invader from the mother's body." Close quote. Murray and Rothbard, The Ethics of Liberty. Anti-abortionists might counter this by asserting it is murder because the unborn child is a human being with all the rights attendant thereof. To this, Rothbard replies, quote, "What humans, we might ask, have the right to be coercive parasites within the body of an unwilling human host?" Close quote. Pro-life cannot answer, bereft of a moral basis upon which to impose the morality of self-sacrifice. They must resort to attacks on the grounds of guilt and sin. Feminists responded by transferring blame for this to men. Rather than arguing the moral merits of abortion, which I can't really think of any, feminists made it a gender issue, pointing fingers of malevolent ire at men. Quote, "Most men are still traditionalists, raised in the stereotypical male view that an unborn child's right to life is so precious because they don't have to be in a position which most women are in financially and societally to worry whether that child, once born, will be able to eat and live a healthy physical and emotional life with the love and support of two able parents who can give it the nurturance it needs." Close quote. Share height, women, and love. This ignores not only that millions of fathers accept the responsibility to work for 18 years or more to support each of their children, but that the typical anti-abortionist is a woman. Quote, "Kristen Luker portrays the typical anti-abortionist, a 44-year-old woman married at age 17 with 3 or more children. She attended college and now stays at home. She attends church at least once a week. She is most likely a Catholic." Close quote. Tara Roth-Madden, Women versus Women, The Uncivil Business War. What's more, the common feminist assertion that men oppose birth control because they want to retain control over women ignores that the early feminists opposed it, that is, they opposed birth control. All of this conceals that it would not be in the best political interests of some factions of the women's movement to honestly work to decrease unplanned pregnancies, because the abortion issue can be used to increase their membership. As Susan Stamberg, a correspondent for National Public Radio, suggested, abortion will be the issue that, quote, "will galvanize a kind of women's movement in this country that we have not seen before," close quote. They shun solutions in favor of political grandstanding. 2015, Olympia, Washington. In the years since I wrote this, men have been screwed, blued, and tattooed by the absolute dominion women have over reproduction. I think it was in 1994 that Maria Shriver did a report about artificial wombs and how wonderful it would be to relieve women of the rigors of pregnancy. Of course, my response was that it would also relieve men of the need to have women in order to reproduce. The idea was not original with me. Science fiction authors were writing about that at least as long ago as the 1950s. What's more, with artificial womb technology, if a woman wanted to abort a pregnancy, she would no longer need to do it by killing the unborn child. It could instead be transplanted into the artificial womb. So the day that we get artificial wombs is the day that any legitimate basis whatsoever for using abortion in terms of killing the baby will just simply go away. Today, MGTOW is the passive answer to this. But as everybody should know by now, a day will come when men really won't need women for reproduction. Which is why I always come back to the warning I issued some 25 years ago. Feminists need to back off and make peace with men now, because in a full-scale backlash against the misandrists, men will utterly defeat and destroy them. Typically, feminists respond to this by screeching about misogyny, hate speech, and that we must be destroyed. Which is ironic because in every case I know, the warnings were issued out of concern for the welfare of women, children, and society. Feminists know this. Their rage is motivated by their lust for power and their need to silence us. Politics and law are the weapons they use, and by these means they are trying to take control over the internet and shut us up there, too. But the worse they make it for us, the worse it will be for them in the end. So they really need to stop, because a time will come when it will be too late. Their defeat is inevitable. That's all for now. Check out the other videos, subscribe to the channel. For the Backlash at Backlash.com, my name is Rod Van Mecklin.